Good day and happy Sabbath to all. This week's Sabbath school program will be titled Youth Influence in the Church, presented by the Collegiate Youth Class.
Thank you, Lord. Martin, typical life, for coronavirus. Thank you, Lord. Martin, to the class. Amen.
So the person that me and Tristan chose was John Lobrecht. I don't know if I'm saying his surname right, but yeah, John Lobrecht. And this is his story. And John Lobrecht was baptized as a first-day Seventh-day Adventist when he was 16 years old. Then he joined the Seventh-day Adventist movement 3 years later. When he turned 17 years old, he became an itinerant preacher. I'm not sure if I'm saying that word right, itinerant, but yeah, itinerant preacher. Of his own accord, he gathered together tracts. I don't know if that word is right, but tracts, walked many miles handing them out, and studied the Bible from house to house. That same year, he began preaching, and before his 18th birthday, he toured with an evangelist, helping to hold evangelistic seminars and winning many to Christ. So that's the story of John Lobrecht.
John Lobrecht is a prime example of strength in faith. He didn't wait for opportunities in church to come to him. He simply chose to preach while traveling and made this his life. This was God's plan for him, and he listened when God called on him to educate his people on the Word and to be a symbol for Adventist believers. Many times we are faced with opportunities to present being faithful and dedicated believers to God. But my question is, do we present ourselves before or after we think about what the other person will think when we say we believe in God? John had no hesitation to preach for the Lord, and that is something we should all aspire to be. Philippians 4 verse 6 to 7 says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Jesus Christ."
Jimmy Shui was born in the Southeast Asian country of Myanmar, previously known as Burma. The Karen people, his people, were being persecuted at the time. When he was still a young boy, he traveled through a dense jungle to be reunited with his father, who had fled to the border of a neighboring country after he had been chased by soldiers. After reuniting, they traveled together to a refugee camp where Jimmy attended an Adventist school. He read about the conflict between Christ and Satan in the Bible, and he decided to forgive those who had wronged him. He later also became a teacher at this school. Jimmy's father urged him to become a pastor and tell his people about the love of God and the hope of eternal life. And as he got older, he got the opportunity to go study theology. He went on to planting churches and starting feeding centers, orphanages, and schools. Jimmy became a Seventh-day Adventist pastor and later resettled in the United States. He soon discovered that many Adventist refugee families whom he had known in the refugee camps were now scattered across North America. They were trying to find Seventh-day Adventist churches but could not speak English well enough to understand the messages or participate in the services. This caused many of the families and people to become discouraged. Jimmy helped these people to organize small groups so they could worship the God of heaven in their own language. With much prayer and hard work, Jimmy planted 3 churches.
As we heard about the story of Jimmy Shui, we noticed that his father had a great impact on his life. After experiencing the Bible's knowledge himself about the conflict between Christ and Satan, he also made important decisions about his life. Those decisions resulted in him becoming a great pastor and asset to the churches he had opened. We as youth can use Jimmy's example to remember the wisdom of the elder people in our church and community. They have more life experience and Bible knowledge, and by spending time with them, they can help us look at the world from a different perspective. Also to highlight that the youth cannot only live by the elders' examples, but should study the Bible themselves.
John Nevin Andrews was an intellectual who enjoyed severe study, much more than physical activity. He was closely associated with James and Ellen White in the leadership and evangelistic work of the SDA Church. J. N. Andrews was born July 22, 1829, in Poland, Maine. He quit school at age 11 and was largely self-taught. It is reported that he was fluent in 7 languages and could recite the New Testament by memory. Early in 1845, at age 15, John accepted the Sabbath from a tract written by T. M. Preble. It changed the direction of his life.
Convinced in early youth that Jesus was returning soon, J. N. Andrews, at the age of 17, embraced the seventh-day Sabbath and thereafter devoted his entire time and talent to the Seventh-day Adventist movement. The foremost intellectual in the early Adventist movement, Andrews made significant contributions to the development of several doctrines, notably the Sabbath, tithing, sleep of the dead, church organization, and the non-combatant status of military draftees. He also served as the 3rd president of the General Conference of Seventh-day Adventists from 1867 to 1869. His example set in motion a tide of missionaries. His history of the Sabbath persuaded thousands, and his journal gave birth to congregations in 3 other continents.
A youth source of energy, creativity, and new ideas has been established under the surface of our communities. It has hardly been touched so far, but is almost bursting out. This force is the 1.6 billion young people from the ages of 14 to 18, which are found all around our globe. It is important to acknowledge that each and every young person has their own unique strengths and are needed to build a better tomorrow and to spread the gospel. Asking the youth on their opinions and ideas is the first big step that is needed to be made in our churches today. This is an invite to all young people to join today's team of people who are ready to go. An invitation to sit at the decision-making table and to present our ideas with the support of our churches to succeed. I would like to leave you with the wise words taken from Education, page 271, of Mrs. Ellen White, who was herself a young girl when of age when she started her work for Christ. With such an army of workers as our youth, rightly trained, might furnish how soon the message of a crucified, risen, and soon coming Savior might be carried to the world. I'd also like to read from Testimonies for the Church. The Lord has appointed the youth to be His helping hand. Let us be encouraged to go, to make a change. Let's be courageous, optimistic, and faithful.
The Adventist Development and Relief Agency, or ADRA, is the global humanitarian arm of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. We are a team of more than 10,000 dedicated humanitarians in more than 100 countries who tirelessly serve the world's most vulnerable people every day. For decades, ADRA has responded to some of the world's most devastating disasters and crises. But nothing could have prepared us for a global pandemic. COVID-19 forced us to rethink and redesign the way we would face this new crisis. Within days of the pandemic, ADRA established a global COVID-19 task force to drive the response. Within weeks, the task force had established a strategy to serve vulnerable people around the world. What did that look like? In response to the pandemic, ADRA created 422 projects to serve 20 million people in 96 countries. ADRA pivoted to meet needs with the support of our generous partners. The ability to leverage funds strategically helped ADRA's response grow to more than $26 million, thanks in large part to the strength and support of our partnerships with the Adventist Church, governments, United Nations agencies, corporations, and other nonprofit organizations. For every $1 that ADRA invested, our partners contributed $7. Our work with the church in particular was a major success. Nearly 70% of all COVID-19 response projects were in partnership with our church. Adventists around the world came together to support the mission of ADRA. They came together in solidarity for those who were suffering and for those who continue to suffer, so all may live as God intended. Thanks to our partnership with the Adventist Church and other agents of change, ADRA is working around the clock to counteract the fallout of the pandemic. For years, ADRA has helped communities stay healthy because we understand that when health is affected, little else matters. This is why we have been supporting health projects around the globe to ensure that people are not made more vulnerable by sickness. Ensuring that families remain healthy was never more important than during this devastating global pandemic. To mitigate the impact of the virus, our response included 97 health projects, helping more than 5 million people around the world. Our partnership with Adventist-led health facilities has reached many in need. During this response, ADRA delivered tons of personal protective equipment supplies to hospitals and healthcare centers so that health workers and patients alike could be protected. In partnership with Adventist broadcasters, ADRA also sent out critically important health messages to millions of people to ensure hand washing and proper precautions to reduce the spread of the virus. ADRA also understands that water and sanitation are critical in times of need. During a health crisis especially, proper sanitation does more than almost anything to stop the spread of the virus. And ADRA has been hard at work to ensure people around the globe have access to hand washing stations, cleaning alcohol, and proper training of sanitation protocols. This year, our COVID task force has tailored 89 projects to address the needs of water and sanitation. More than 4 million people have accessed these projects. Few fallouts of any crisis, however, can match the desperation of global hunger. As markets collapsed, economies crumbled, and millions lost their jobs. Food became harder to find and to afford. Families who had never experienced hunger waited in lines at food banks and distribution centers. Children missed meals. Many felt the pangs not only of hunger, but also of hopelessness. For these reasons, ADRA spent $8.5 million to ensure that vulnerable families around the world would not go hungry. In Northern Colombia, ADRA worked with the Adventist Church to select 100 YU indigenous families who were unable to work and earn money so they could receive regular food baskets during the pandemic. In total, our COVID task force implemented 134 projects to feed more than 6 million people around the world. During these times of instability and confusion, support systems break down, mental health suffers, and individuals feel isolated and lonely. ADRA serves them during this time of great suffering. 58 of our COVID-19 projects are tailored specifically for psychosocial support. 2.6 million people have connected with us through these projects and have learned they are not alone. Since the start of our COVID task force, our 422 projects have assured 20 million precious lives that they will not be defeated by the pandemic. This example has given hope to millions more. As ADRA's response grows, our focus will expand to help communities recover from the long term. This forward momentum will see an increased focus in areas of resilience, rebuilding livelihoods, and education for all children. While it is true that the global effects of this novel coronavirus are unprecedented, it is also true that ADRA, in partnership with the Adventist Church, has a proven capacity to rise to the occasion. We serve as the hands and feet of Jesus, so all may live as God intended. Not even a pandemic can change that.
God, I want to start off by thanking you for this wonderful day and for all your blessings. Thank you for loving us and caring for us despite our sinful natures. I ask that you will please guide our actions so that they will glorify your name and lead others to you. Amen.